welcome to another We Are Developers Live. We are live again on the internet. You can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on the We Are Developers page. And a recording of this will be edited later on. I'm Chris Heilman. I'm the VP of Developer Relations at We Are Developers. I'm here with Daniel Cranny, who's actually one of our DevRel people. And he's frozen at the second, but now he's back, so that's good. We just discussed that Daniel is the right way to go, or Dan is the right way to go, because Danny Cranny doesn't sound good. It sounds like a wind-up toy, doesn't it?
Yeah, not a good name. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that with everybody, Chris. I think that's always a nice way to go. So now I'm going to be known as Danny Cranny. So yeah, great fun. Good start.
Well, it's also been your first year at We Are Developers. So how do you feel?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I won't tell your boss. So how was it so far?
It's great. I mean, I posted about it just a few minutes ago on LinkedIn. It's the fact that I get to do lots of different things in a day that I really enjoy. And I know everybody sort of says this, but it's like some days I do genuinely say to myself, like, how is this my job? That I get to read about topics I enjoy and come and do things like this. So yeah, I love it. It's been a great year. Remote work as well. It's been amazing, especially when I've had a kid. So yeah, lots of things to talk about. But yeah, it's great to sort of celebrate it, I suppose, with a live stream. So yeah, good fun.
Excellent. Well, we have a guest again, as always, and this time it's actually Salma Alam-Naylor. She was one of our champions at Code 100, and now now considering what she's wearing and the background that you put up there, you're a Zen master at the moment, right?
I'm trying to be, because the Code 100 was one of the most stressful times of my life to date.
Oh, how's that?
Well, I can't use a Windows machine, can I? And there I am on stage trying to competitively code on a keyboard that I can't code on, with everyone loud music. And, you know, it was very stressful, extremely stressful, but a lot of fun. Nice to meet you in real life, actually. And I was very sad that I didn't win, because I'm a very competitive person, but the odds were against me.
You worked before in agencies, right? Like, I mean, is it just me who basically always were in the bad situation that I had to work with any computer that they put in front of me rather than the choices that I wanted to have? Or is it just common nowadays that you can choose your environment?
I was very lucky that I could choose every time I've had a job, and I have never. Oh, actually, the first dev job I had, I was on Windows, but I didn't know anything about anything then. And then all the jobs after that, I had a choice, and because I was a Mac user at home, I automatically just chose Macs for my job. And 12 years later, I can't use. I mean, funny story. Actually, one of the things that's been on my to-do list for ages is to set up version control for my OBS settings on my Windows machine that I stream from. But I don't even think I have Git installed on that machine, and I'm just afraid to try. But maybe once I get over that hurdle and I actually do that thing on my list, maybe I can then win the next Code 100 challenge, because I'll be able to code on a Windows machine.
It feels weird, like when you come from a Mac and you're used to that installation of like a double click on an icon and dragging something into the applications folder and uninstalling it by dragging it out of the applications folder or just deleting the thing. The whole like wizard steps, 15 things. Do you really want to do this? And Git is really, really bad at that. Like, I mean, the Git installation on Windows asks you to basically all the things we do in dot files. It asks you in an interface. So do you want to do that? Do you want to do that? Do you want to do that? And like 20 minutes later, you just basically gave up on life and you just don't want to do it any longer. The biggest tip that I found on that is basically use the Git desktop app, the GitHub desktop app, because that installs Git in the background and Visual Studio Code, and then you're done. And that basically is the thing that made me happy on Windows machines as well, or less annoyed on Windows machines.
Thank you. That's made me feel a little bit more confident, actually, to finally get it done.
And when it comes to like settings and stuff, what I normally use is Dropbox instead of Git, and just put it in there, like put a put a symlink on the folder and put the real folder in Dropbox, because then I could share it amongst different machines rather than just having to reset it every single time. I mean, Edge and VS Code and others do that now, but back in the days, it was just like you had to reset it for every computer that you had. Again, first world problem if you have more than one computer, but it's thing when it came out of sync.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel empowered to do what I need to do.
Cool. So without further ado, let's go and share the resources that we want to talk about this time. And again, people can play along if they wanted to. So it's at devrel@wearedevelopers.com, and there is a link called We Are Developers Live, and there's the different shows, the recordings of the shows that we had before, and the current one. And that was me coughing into the microphone, so I'm sorry about that. Let's start with some news. European Union launches Invest AI initiative to mobilize 200 billion of investment in artificial intelligence. I'm excited about this because everybody is complaining that Europe is falling behind and the European Union is doing things. I just wonder where that goes, if it's going to go into like faxes being sent from one country to another and people disagreeing on things. And basically, it pledges 200 billion in AI spending to bid to catch up with US and China. I'm just wondering why it is all so expensive. I mean, we know it's mostly compute power, but it just feels like so weird that we tell people that our AI saves them money because it makes them so much more effective, and we all have to scramble money together just to use it. So how do you feel about that? Do you think Europe is competitive? Well, UK is not part of Europe, but it's seen as part of Europe, I guess. But do you think we have a chance to actually play in this place, or is it just like be a battleground between China and the US?
I just want to kind of know where the investment is going because I think AI has an incredible opportunity to do a lot of good and a lot of innovative problem solving potentially. But what we all seem to be doing with AI is just making GPT wrappers and summarizing text and summarizing emails. And like, where are the companies that are solving the real problems with this type of technology and the real problems that could like further the human experience rather than just taking away cognitive things that actually our brain needs in order to function correctly. Like we need to be able to solve puzzles and solve problems and reason and make decisions with information rather than getting technology to do it for us all the time. So I want to know where it's going. Like, is it going like, you'd like to think that the EU is a little bit more sensible in terms of these things, in terms of quality of life and looking after humans. So hopefully it's going some way to invest in that kind of technology, but because we don't need any more text summary tools.
I'm wondering, just to jump on the back of that, about whether some of those sort of GPT wrappers they're the sort of the attractive things that people are attracted to. They sort of go, oh, I don't really understand AI, but I've seen this cool. It's really interesting. It can help me in my everyday life. And I wonder if this investment it's not, I assume it's not going to be spent for things like that, right? There are tools that are GPT wrappers. I'd imagine it's infrastructural. And my first thought actually was, is 200 billion a lot? And I know that sounds ridiculous to say, it's a huge amount of money, but is it a lot compared to what the US and China are putting into it? I have no sense of if that's actually a lot of money or not. Do you guys know? Or?
No.
Well, that's the fun bit, like that basically DeepSeek showed that if you go with an open source model and most likely stealing a lot of stuff from other companies, then basically you can create something. I mean, there was a few people on Hugging Face that basically used for $30 or $50 compute power, had their own model of basically running. And that's that's the possibility when you don't have to pay for every interaction. I think the bigger problem is that by keeping the content in a certain company and wanting people to keep coming back, that is actually where the compute power comes in, rather than allowing people to host it locally. We talked with Thomas Steiner last week as well about like the stuff that's coming on the web that's also going to be shipped with the browser or with the operating system. So it's going to be an interesting thing where that goes. But I think the infrastructure bit that you pointed out is where most of that money needs to go, because data centers and just power needs for these environments is something that I want. Which brings me back to what Salma was talking about. Like, why don't we? We have advances in battery technology because of AI. We have advances in solar panel efficiency because of AI. But most of the stuff that we actually get excited about is like, oh, we can now create more videos that people don't watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sorry, just to finish up on that, really. I think you're right. It's because some of the infrastructural things, they don't sound very interesting. They sound like big engineering projects, and I don't think the average person is very excited by that. They're saying, okay, great, you're going to put some technology in that in some way I'm going to benefit from, but I don't really understand how I'm going to benefit from it. So can you just show me how this is going to write my essay for university or whatever? But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I'd love to sort of maybe on next week, let's see if we can do a bit of digging into what the investment has been like in the US and China, so we get a sense of is the EU actually going to keep up, or is this just like essentially a press release that sounds great but maybe doesn't do a whole lot? Be interesting to see.
I wanna go back to what Salma had said, that basically the machines taking cognitive tasks away from us is actually bad for humans. So we had that last week as well, where we had one post that said like, is AI creating a whole generation of illiterate developers, because we don't go for the solving the problem anymore. We just basically ask the machine to do it, and we don't even go back to it as well. Like it seems like, why should I retain information when I can ask a machine every second of my life to give me the answer? But it feels like that from a neuroscience point of view, it's actually really bad for humans not to solve puzzles. Is this something that you've been looking into?
It's just something I've been thinking a lot about it, because, you know, as a developer with all of these AI tools being thrust in our faces, I've tried them, and I just cannot work effectively with them, because at the baseline of why I became a developer and why I continue to be a developer, it's to solve problems and create things. Like, I prefer, like, the process for me is about building the app, not having an app. And I think a lot of these AI code gen tools in particular, they focus on the end goal. Oh, look, you can build an app in a minute. Just give it a prompt. There, you've got an app. Now go make your SaaS money. But the thing that, I mean, it sounds a little bit old school, but like, it's about the craft for me. And it's about the process of deliberately trying it that way and then trying it another way. And then like untangling the problem and getting to a solution. And I feel, similarly about music. You know, I'm a musician. I did a music degree. I come from music, and AI music generation thoroughly upsets me, because there is no human essence in that. You know, Suno AI, I think there was a news article or something, and please don't quote me on this, but apparently it came about that Suno actually just basically stole all the music off the internet and used it to train the model. And you can hear that in the AI generated results. It's confused. It doesn't tell a story. Yes, it sounds impressive because you can give it some lyrics and look, bam, you've got kind of a pop song, but there is no structure to any of these songs. They are all linear. And I think that is replicated in the code that you get from LLMs. The code is code that existed before or may have existed based on this token order. And there's no soul to it. And I know that's probably going a little bit far, because is there soul in code? That's a whole nother like episode, whole nother question. But code like is a creation from the human brain, and it needs lived experiences to be crafted correctly for that situation. And AIs don't have that context and that lived experience and that empathy. I was actually on Blue Sky talking to someone the other day about this. They used AI. They weren't really a front-end developer, but they used AI to make an app, a Blue Sky client actually, for muting. And they asked me to take a look at some of the code, and like, it was completely inaccessible. The front-end form thing, like no consideration to any of that. And even as someone who doesn't really have much experience as a developer, when you read like some tutorials or you go through learning this should come as standard with it. But, you know, it makes it look like you've got an app when AI is generating it for you. But if you really like pull the cover off, is it really worth it? And what have you sacrificed in your brain in order to get there if you don't go back and look over it and really make an attempt to understand it? And developers are lazy. They just want to go from A to B, whether that be through automating things or asking an AI to create it for them. And I think that's going to come up against some really difficult challenges when there are more and more AI apps in the world that people are paying for and using every day. It's a bit like when AI generated code and AI generated text and blog posts. AIs are getting trained on AI generated blog posts. And so it's just going to be this like Ouroboros of AI content that will eventually make zero sense to an actual living human.
Yeah, it's that was a lot, and there's a lot of great stuff. And I just saw like so many shorts in that one. So this is really good. I mean, the question is, you're totally right. Like we are rehashing, we are actually remixing things that exist already with these generated things. I think it's less. We all keep selling AI as a boon to the effectiveness of developers, but I think it's actually more to get product managers excited than developers. You said developers are lazy and we automate things, but we're always lazy when we just can do things about it. Like why spend 20 minutes doing something when you can spend 4.5 hours failing to automate it, using 5 different new things you haven't done before. But the product managers of this world and the people that basically are out there and say like this product should be out and we should be releasing it, they get more excited about that thing. I mean, GitHub Copilot just announced their agent in VS Code. And it says like, okay, you can paint your app as an image, and then you can actually generate that code from that image. And that is always the coolest demo that people show. And I as a developer, I gave up on people giving me screenshots to build applications about 20 years ago. I'm like, this is a screenshot is not an application. A screen is a state in the flow of the application. It's just one snapshot of it, not the end all and the beginning of it. And it just fascinates me that this is still the killer feature that people always keep showing to others. So yeah, it's interesting how far that goes, and we're going to have a piece about that later on as well. Mistral had a new chat system called Le Chat, which is lovely because it's like cat in French, and they basically released the whole thing, and it wants to be like it says it's much faster. It says it has upload processing much faster, in-place code execution and analysis. So there seems to be a lot of cool stuff, and I love that they actually do that. Like, here is when you create a cat in sipping tea in France, what the results of that is. I guess I want to play with it. How about you? Do you use any of these day-to-day agents to start your life, or is it just when you get stuck, you start using them?
What problem is something like this solving? That's my question.
Well, I
It's
guess
not
it's the
anything new,
thing
right?
that we had with Siri and Cortana and all these things as well. Like you normally, I guess if you're a 1960s director of a company, you had your secretary in the morning in the office, and you said like, "What's on my schedule today?" And that should be the same thing. But yeah, if we need assistants to do our work every single day, maybe the work is not organized the right way.
Can you not just look at your calendar and your to-do list and learn how to organize your life? Like, that's a core skill. That's a core human skill. There may be a theme here that I just don't understand. I enjoy organizing my life. Like, I enjoy it. Maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know. But I have turned off all of the new Siri Apple Intelligence features because they were completely getting in the way for me. The summarizing of the notifications was complete nonsense. It worried me a lot of the time because it summarized it wrongly. And I like looking at things and processing information myself. Like, I don't understand what else I could be doing with my time that this is doing for me, because I don't trust these things. So I'm still going to have to check over the result, like same as when you got to check over the code results that you get from code gens. I'm skeptical, but I'm old, so I don't know.
I mean, I'm also old, right? And I don't enjoy organizing my life. I think I don't enjoy it because I'm not very good at it. And I don't know, I'm a bit of I'm sort of devil's advocate, I suppose, when it comes to outsourcing things, because I think that you make a good point. Okay, we don't want to outsource everything and just be like, not actually doing any thinking. But I think that we will still practice those scheduling, or synthesizing information, all these things that AI is doing for us. I think that we'll still do them. We might just do them in fewer areas of our life, maybe in different ways. But I think when I see something like this, I actually think, oh, great, I could outsource little parts of my life to this. Even sometimes it's very simple. I might have just 5 things in my head that I need to do that week, and throwing it into AI. I will do that. I'll say, which one should I prioritize? Because whether it's that I can't be bothered to think about it, or just the overwhelmingness of having to sit down and do it is what makes me not do it. So I don't know. I don't think I'll use that particular bot. I think for me, I just add it to the list of ones that I use when ChatGPT is down, to be totally honest with you. And it looks faster, but I don't think the average user is really going to care about a few milliseconds difference in speed. But maybe that's just how I'm looking at it.
Maybe you can solve a problem when it comes to like organizing your life. When I put socks off the washing machine on the dryer to actually dry them, I pair them up while I'm actually drying them, rather than like pairing them when I collect them from the clothes horse to put back. According to my partner, this is weird. What do you say? Is it more effective to pair them first, or pair them when you put them in the cupboard?
Pair them first, obviously. Because you're it's like a sorting algorithm, right? Isn't it? You don't just put everything in to the bowl that you need to process and then take it out and try and find it. You put them in an organized way so that you can get them out organized. Good stuff in, good stuff out. Bad stuff in, bad stuff out. I am with you, Chris.
Jan disagreed, apparently.
Yeah, but I did until Salma brought up algorithms, and then I just can't win that argument. It's like I'm kind of defeated. But I always look at it as do each stage of the workflow. If you're going to do it loads of times, put all of those times together and only do it sort of once, so you can get into that repeated motion. So my question is, surely your socks are still wet if you're pairing them up when they come straight out of the washing machine? Well, you don't want wet socks. You'll be stinky socks, Chris.
You place them next to each other.
But you hang them up next to each other, or you hang them up like a raccoon on crack, like anywhere you want to. This is just anarchy.
Because I thought you meant, putting it sort of together. That's a whole different story, right? Then you're just getting wet socks. But okay, maybe I can see it. Do you know what? I'll try it. I'll do some unit tests on it, and I'll come back to you and let you know if it works.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, if I can get AI to do my laundry and pair the socks for me, like that's something that I don't want to do in my life. Like that, it's these physical tasks that take away time from relaxing or meditating. I mean, I guess you can relax and meditate while you're pairing socks if things are not too chaotic around you. But that's the kind of stuff I want to get taken out of my daily life. I want the traveling and I haven't had time to cook a good meal. So can I have an AI like put me together and a robot like a really nice healthy meal, please? Like go and get the ingredients, go and cook it, put it together so I can have some nice nutrition and I don't have to like spend the actual physical time doing that. Now, if you enjoy cooking, then fair enough, go and do that. And I do. But I guess the AI I need in my life is thing like if I'm in a certain situation in my life and I have like a deadline, I've got to like do this work and it's going to take me a few extra hours. I want then an AI, a robot to go and do all the other stuff that I don't have time to right now because I'm up against a deadline. But then there's a lot to be said for work is not everything. And is that deadline really an emergency? And is anyone going to die? So go and do your cooking and go and do your laundry. So it's there's always two sides to this argument, isn't there?
Now, US and UK refused to sign safety declaration at AI Summit. Why is England always doing that?
You got 2 Brits. Salma, do you want to take that one? Or
I am not responsible for the actions of my country. End of story. I don't know. It's because they don't know enough, right? I think it's because they don't know enough, and no one knows enough. No, and some people are scared of AI as well. I know a friend who, it's funny now, she works at a marketing agency. And a year and a half ago, when AI was first thrust upon the scene, she said to me, Salma, you're in tech, so I can ask you this question. Should I be scared of AI? And that's what some people are still thinking potentially. But funny story, she is now an AI ambassador for her company and has now facilitated the adoption of AI tools throughout the company. So she's not scared of it anymore. But potentially, I think there's a lot of people who, you know, we are kind of a minority working in this industry, really, with how much we know and how much we stay on top of things and how much we are reading and consuming all day and getting AI to summarize for us. So maybe there's just a level of information that hasn't infiltrated, or maybe there is some cunning plan to use AI to take over the world from the depths of England. I don't know.
I think the one thing that actually was in the Charter was that basically it doesn't allow facial recognition on in public spaces unless a crime has been committed. And I think England already has this in place. So basically, I guess that's why they can't sign it, because they're already doing it. Like every tube station in London, you always have facial recognition, and without consent or without asking for consent, because the UK doesn't need to do that. In Europe, you need to do it every single time. This was doing the rounds, and I found that really interesting. Somebody created an endless Wikipedia feed to actually get you WikiTalk, it was called. It's basically an app, much like a chat system that you have, that actually allows you to go, and it does that rabbit hole 3 o'clock in the morning, slightly drunk Wikipedia clicking that you do, and automates it for you, just to show you just how addicted we are to these feeds. Now, Dan, you looked into it a bit more, right?
Yeah, I really like this idea. I think that it's a bit of a protest, really. He's sort of trying to, yeah, as you say, make that point about how addicted we are to our screens. But I actually think, other than it just being an interesting project, there's actually something really valuable in that. We talked off air just before about, you know, whether we've got that interest in kind of trivia, and I really do. I've always loved sort of someone showing me something that's interesting that I don't initially think is interesting. I'm a little bit scared off when I see something like that, microsociology, immediately, and I think, okay, I've got no clue. But Wikipedia is a great way in. We do it for most things, right? I wouldn't say you use it as the source of information. Once you really know about a subject, you might start going off to some of those links. But I think that's a great way to just throw something at you. It reminds me a bit of Stumble Upon. Wasn't that kind of the basis of that? Did it just show you something random, or was it that you searched for something and then it showed you like the first result? I don't quite remember how it worked, but I really like it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love this. This is really what I love about technology, in like using technology to build something that turns something that has become so ingrained in society on its head. And it's one of the things that I wish I'd built. And it's only the first time I'm finding out about this, actually. And I want to research it more, delve into it more. And I think I want to use it, because I think we've become so accustomed to scrolling endlessly things. And a lot of the things that we are scrolling endlessly give us actually no value whatsoever. And the things that are put in front of us by money and advertising and whatnot, like it's completely, it distracts us from what we should really be worrying about or caring about or enjoying. And I know I was saying before we went live, I'm terrible at trivia, and maybe this will help me win all the pub quizzes. And I'm excited to try this out and learn some stuff. I think it will actually give me some really fun stuff to share in my newsletter, to be honest. That's my ulterior motive.
Yeah, I think it's fun that, I mean, Wikipedia is still the thing that people are just worried about, like that people want to buy it and like get rid of it. Like, I mean, a certain person that runs a company with tea that does electric cars wanted to buy it a few times, and it feels like that it's just this wonderful resource that we have. And when I lived in Stockholm, I lived up below the Wikimedia Foundation. They had an office up there, and you went for coffee and you met them, and it was just really, really fun to work with that. And I met the founder a few times in pubs in London, actually, when we had like after parties at events. He just showed up randomly, and it was just good that we have it. But that this interface to show like, here is what random things you actually spend your time on is really interesting to see. There's an artificial intelligence playbook from the UK government, to bang on about it again. Have you looked into that and done your work as a citizen, or is this news to you as well?
News to me again. Tell me more.
It feels very British.
Yeah.
It feels very
How
British for us
so?
to just have. It's a very dense kind of document. It's lots of we're making this available for you, but again, they're like links buried really deeply. It's kind of bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake to some degree. I'd like to think that this is going to be something that's really useful, because Salma, you made a really good point when you said most people know almost nothing about AI. And I was working in education before this, so you know that technology is always very outdated. But it wasn't just the technology; it was the attitudes and the general knowledge that people had of technology made it completely, scary for them to use AI, so they didn't do it. And so I think there's hope that something like this is good for the average person. But are they really going to read that? Are they going to go on that site and bury it in? I don't think so.
I'm going to see if there's a German edition. I probably need a fax machine for that, but we'll see. It's interesting that governments do these kind of things. But I have to say, Gov.uk did good jobs with accessibility explanations in the past. So in these kind of things, so it feels like this was just, we need to do something because the AI summit is coming up or something. So they're going to sort it out and clean it. Hopefully it has an open license so we can add to it, but I doubt it. Let's see. Conventional commits. This is something that I was looking at, and it basically is a proposal how to actually have a commit standard, a de facto standard for writing commit messages to make it easier for both humans and machines to index them. Now, honestly, how do you write your commit messages? Do you put a lot of effort into it, or do you get them generated for you, or how often do you actually take a look at them as well?
It depends what project I'm working on. If it's my own website, and you know those commits that you have to make over and over again to try and like make something run in CI or something like that. Hopefully this time it will work, etc. Some projects I can commit like that because I'm the only one who's going to be looking at the commits. But if I'm committing to open source repos, or if I'm making a project that I want people to contribute to, I will definitely describe the commit as well as I can about the feature or whatever. But then I think a lot of the time, if you're looking at like a commit on GitHub or wherever you host your code, if you want to know what happened in the commit, you go into the commit and you look at the files that were changed, and maybe you look at the comments on the pull request or whatever. I do get the idea of, if we're going to be indexing all of these things with machines and using AI or whatever to craft the perfect commit message, then maybe some kind of system is worth it. But I think if we over systemize things like this, it can put blockers in people's way, especially when they're just getting started. Imagine if every time you tried to write a commit and a machine told you, oh no, sorry, that's the wrong description for that commit, and you chose the wrong type, so you've got to do it all again. Oh, okay, I'll try again. No, sorry, it's still wrong. I can't let you commit it. It's like linting. Sometimes linting can like be over prescriptive, and it really gets in your way of actually doing the thing. So it depends, I think, as usual, as to what type of project, what type of team, and whether it's public or not, or just for yourself. That's my take.
Dan?
I think the type is useful, even just having the type. Like with as standard, I just have 4 where I do fix, chore, refactor, and sort in the list docs. That's the only ones I ever use for myself, really, where I'm like, this is just before I write the commit message. And it's really just so I've got a sense of what I was doing, aside from that description, because I'm not always great at making that description something I can understand 6 months from now. But yeah, same thing. I'd say I feel a little bit like with most things, it's a bit like, you don't always put your sort of sharp suit on when you, this is a weird analogy, stay with me, but like you don't put a sharp suit on to just sit at home if nobody's going to see it, right? And so if it's just for me on my own project, I kind of make it understandable for me. If it's for somebody else, like if it's going on to an open source project, I feel way more under the spotlight, if you like, about making sure that this makes sense to other people and making sure I'm giving acknowledgement to people that might have helped, or other commits that I've learned things from, or whatever it might be. So yeah, when it's for me, I probably don't do myself the best quality commits, but they work for me. So I don't know if we need a standard, really.
I think when it comes to pull requests, then it's more important than because that's like I'm merging it to my project. Just one commit of like, okay, I don't even know if you're ready yet, if you're done yet. Commits should be atomic rather than just at the end of the thing. So I like that GitHub Copilot allows me to do that and actually creates like walkthroughs as well, like say like, okay, this code changed that, and here is how to see the changes in the code kind of thing. So that kind of like boilerplate stuff that is super annoying to type every single time can be automated away from you. So it's an interesting idea. We had here Raymond Camden, which we talked about before at we had him here, didn't we? No.
Yeah, yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
I think
Yeah.
we did. Yeah.
So he talked about optimizing images with Cloudinary, so where he actually has a Dropbox trigger and actually does it on his own machine, not like you do in a build process on your site. So that's an interesting thing to take a look at, like what Cloudinary can do for you. It feels like a bit like a lot of steps. What I've done in the past is I'm using Image Optim, which is this one here. Optim. And that one just allows you to drag images in and change them immediately, and then it saves them. It changes the file on the machine, and it also has a command line. So what I've done in the past is I used Hazel, which is like basically a watch on a folder in macOS, and every single time it actually dragged an image into it and realized it's an image, then it optimized it with Image Optim and does it under the hood, so to say. But it needed 2 tools for that. But it still is really cool that somebody does like a Cloudinary service on his own machine. So I think that's worth a read. So we had another tool last week where we showed that basically monitors your copy and paste. And if you copy an image, it automatically optimized it before it pasted it next time. So that was kind of cute as well.
That's clever.
So yeah, smaller image is always a good idea. Right then, when you give me always these 7 gig files for like the 15-minute videos, like
that's it. I always like to think, at least then you can make it smaller. You can't go the other way. That's my argument.
Well, you can now with like the AI enhancement of images and videos. So this is not the point anymore. Now, this was one of the things that we talked about earlier, so we don't have to go in detail anymore. It's basically it's a very, very enthusiastic person about AI and about what's going on, and basically says like that, like the path forward is for software engineers are not doing handcrafted commits and writing things, but they're not hiring junior mid-level software engineers because it's all about getting the product out and throwing the product there, and the idea people are the ones that own the future.
You still need doers, right? What happens when all the senior engineers retire and you've got no junior engineers that you've been mentoring to bring up to senior by the time you leave, by the time you can't work anymore? Like, I think it's very short-sighted, and it's very it doesn't look at like a functioning society in terms of you need lots of different people to do lots of different tasks. Some people prefer to do the low level like automation or pipeline, like minuscule like a little change work there. Some people prefer to go like big, and I'm the feature person, right? I develop all the features, but someone has got to maintain those features, otherwise your software is going to rot. There's a place for everyone, and I think it's very silly to say otherwise, to be honest, if I may be so bold.
Same here, like generative AI is all about the applications now. That's kind of the same feel. It says like, okay, now with DeepSeek, we have a free open source version and a cheap version that is optimized to actually generate applications, generate AI and generate code. So the application of what it does is actually more important than the code behind it. We talked to Paul Kinlan before about this as well, where he said like, okay, there is a point for throwaway code, like just an app that you build for yourself to do a task and then you don't do it again. But it feels to me like the application, to me, when you talk about software application, is not the end goal. The end goal is to allow users to do a task better than they did before.
Yes.
And we always go for the app as the solution because iOS or Apple told us that's the thing to do. There's an app for that. But no, there could be a website for that. There could be a bloody book for that. So
there could be a pen and paper for that. There could be so many real world things. Not everything has to be an app. You're so right. You're so right.
So it feels like there's people that just want to shortcut the thing. Like I remember when the Onion did like a piss take of the of TED Talks, where it was this guy is like, yeah, cars that drive on rubbish that you have from your house. That's the future. I don't know how to do it. You're the idea. You're the implementers. I'm just here for the ideas, and it feels like that to a degree as well. Like, here is what people need. And one of the big things in Microsoft when I worked there was always the find the unmet need of the user. Like a lot of times people say they want one thing, but when you ask like 5 times more what they really want to do, another solution is actually what they're looking for. And this is, I think it's wasteful to just generate lots of AI-generated apps to do atomic little tasks when it could be part of an operating system, or it could be part of a browser, and it could be visiting in there. I had this with Dan the other day as well. Like when you upload something to any social media platform now, you have an image editor built in. When Twitter came out, I always had to resize my images accordingly, and I had to use Photoshop to make a meme or something. But now that's all built in because this task has become a common thing to do. So it should be part of the platform and not just be another third-party thing to do.
I think a lot of it as well is about the grift. You know, people want to be known for creating something that people use that gets them 100K MMR. Or whatever, that, you know, with those people with their MMRs in bio and all of that. And I think people want to make stuff, and that's great, right? I don't want to say don't make stuff, but you can't. People are trying to make stuff to solve problems that they're creating themselves that don't already exist, and that they've maybe been solved in another way because that they've got no other ideas, so they'll try and try. I see these people cranking out AI generated apps day after day, week after week. And like you say, it's wasteful. And could you be putting all of that energy into really solving a problem in an innovative, like future forward way, rather than just like rehashing the same fake problems? And people these days are selling us the problem, and then they're selling us their solution to a problem that they invented. And I think we can be better than that as a whole, to be honest.
Same here. AI tutoring helps Nigerian students gain 2 years of learning in 6 weeks. That just means that the courses that they had to learn are super formulaic and unnecessary, or like should be rewritten, right? Like if that's the gain of it, then why did you need 2 years to learn that stuff before? It feels odd.
We also have to kind of take into consideration, you know, I used to be a teacher, and deep learning does not take place over 6 weeks. You know, there is a case for the Indian instrument, the sitar, and sitar masters, teachers, they say you spend your whole life learning the sitar. You never master the sitar. And I think that's the same with any profession, really. You can't just reach the ceiling of getting good at something and then, right, you're done. You've learned it now. There's things change. It's a process. And your brain, if we're going to go back to the brain and neurons, your brain has to form connections to information and signals over time. And you can't do that in 6 weeks. That should take 2 years. And I think we are too focused on a society of doing things as soon as possible. And then a headline like that makes you think, oh, if these students can do 2 years of learning in 6 weeks, then I can learn web dev and in 6 weeks, and I can make 100K MMR like tomorrow. And I think we are getting sold this false promise of success as soon as possible, and everything takes time because of human physiology. And I wish people could realize that more.
It's like that slow and fast thinking process, that book, that old one that actually says like, okay, like more emotional depth into it, then you will learn it better. I mean, this rings true when it comes to like when doing a test actually, and not failing a test means you learned it. But that doesn't mean anything. The amount of times I learned things in school that I forgot 2 weeks later because I didn't bother anymore, I just want to get that test done. that was that learning. So I think that's a thing. You twitched as well, Dan, because it goes back to your past as a teacher as well, didn't you?
Yeah, and I mean, Salma, I think you put it brilliantly. It's like that deep learning. It just cannot happen in that period of time. And it almost reminded me of when there was a period where I was training teachers how to teach. So I would watch their sessions and then give them feedback. And the amount of times that they would sort of feel like they were under the spotlight, you know, and students would be asked the question and they would say, I don't know. And the teachers would go, I've told you. And then they would look at me and they would go, I've told them this, I've told them this, you know. And I would say, okay, so you said the words. Like, there's a very big difference between you saying the words and the students understanding, comprehending, being able to use that information, analyze it, blah, blah, blah. Now, that's the problem, right? Just because you can build an app that would have taken you 2 years to learn how to build yourself doesn't mean you have learned enough to actually build it. It just means you knew what to ask. Going back to LLM, you knew what to ask your AI-powered IDE to do it for you. And then you go, look, I've done 2 years worth of work in 6 weeks. The headline word, Salma nailed it. It's pure clickbait. I think that's a load of rubbish, to be honest, that whole story, really.
That was an interesting one. There is a new malware that actually, for mobile phones, that goes through your screenshot folder and actually indexes the images there, because it actually realized that people take pictures of like passwords and pictures of like SIM cards and all kind of information. The screenshot folder is actually a treasure trove of information. And it's that I never heard of that before. It's a really, really clever idea to actually get people's information. Much like when a third-party company asks me, like, "Hey, we can write emails for you if you give us access to your Gmail account." And I'm like, "Dude, I've got everything in there, like work contracts. I've got like passwords. I've got like basically every single time I sign up for something, it gives me an email that sends back. So that's indexed there. So make sure that your screenshots don't stay on your machine or don't download random stuff. Is the learning from that one. Now let's take a look at some tools. VS Code Pets is something that I showed Dan. It's not new, but I think it's actually really, really cute. And let me see if I got it installed, actually. I don't, I think. Or do I? No, not on this machine. But basically what it gives you is like pets in a folder here, and you can have a cat and you can have a mouse and you can throw balls for it. And it can actually interfere with your coding as well. So it's a serendipity thing to basically get a bit of whimsy in your day-to-day life. And Dan, you were excited about it, right?
Yeah, just give me cats everywhere. That's what I want, really. So any excuse. I always think that's just like going back to what you were saying, Salma, about the grift, that everybody's trying to make things just to sell them, and that is a great example of a project that's not trying to do that. And yeah, I like the word whimsy, Chris. I haven't heard that in a while. That's perfect for it. I love it. So cute, so cute.
Cool. So that was fun. Who can use this color combination? You tweeted, you LinkedIn about it. Is that what you say? You had that on LinkedIn today.
Yeah. I just think things like this are so useful because it's accessibility is, like we've said before, it's such a sort of profession, an area of specialism in itself, an area of expertise. And things like this just take all of the thinking out. And I think that when you're looking at people with visual impairments, and I used to teach a student who was probably the best filmmaker I've ever taught, and he only told me after a year that he essentially could only see red. And that was why he would use it so much in his films. And I thought, I haven't been factoring that in at all to anything that I was teaching him with or anything I would show him. I mean, I didn't know, but yeah, this is just a great tool for taking that out. And actually, it's one more little check you can do before you apply that brand color to your entire site, to just say, how will that be for some other people? Yeah, it's great.
I like that the Yahoo brand color was purple because it was the cheapest color they could get to paint the first office. So that was the reason why it was purple. And it was just purple and yellow, which doesn't fit at all, but it was basically the two colors that they could get cheapest to paint the office. And again, if you have a browser like Edge or Chrome, this is built in. So if you actually go to the mobile emulation, and you can go here to that color picker, and you can go here to that eye, and you can actually see the different ways people perceive color, and you can simulate that for your website. So you don't even need to use a third-party tool. It's built into your browser, and it's important because there's a lot of people out there with like vision deficiencies that you might not know about. Blurring is interesting as well, to see if your text is big enough or if your buttons are big enough. My glasses are dirty, so I get that feature all the time. But I think it's great that it's actually built into the browser, and that people should know more about this and actually try it out differently as well. This is an interesting one. This is weird. This is a wrong link. No, there we go. SniffNet is an application to actually see all the traffic that's happening on your machine. I used Little Snitch in the past, but because it costs money, this one is free, and it's pretty interesting, especially when you're on public Wi-Fi in airports and train stations and stuff, and just see where your information goes and who is actually all looking into your stuff. And it's available for all platforms, and you can play with it. You can look at the source code as well. I don't know what the license is. Apache MIT licenses. So basically, it's open source as well. Maybe something fun to contribute to as well. It's also good to scare people from time to time if they think the website that they're going to is not sniffing on them. I think Little Snitch was a nicer name for a product that does that, but SniffNet is quite nice as well. Now, there's a honeypot project. We can go quickly about this. If you don't know what a honeypot is, it normally is like a thing that looks legit and gives you the happy path as an attacker. So you go there and you get the information. It looks like you hacked the server, but you didn't. So this one actually serves realistic, vulnerable-looking endpoints to detect vulnerability scans and mislead attackers into providing false attacks. A very basic thing. The first honeypot I've ever done was in forms. Like when you had a form on the web and you had an email form field in there called email, you will have lots and lots of bots trying to send email and send things in there. So I always put like a hidden field in there called email, and I knew when this one was filled in, then it was a bot, another person doing it. So that's kind of the honeypot idea. And this one is a really, really sophisticated way of doing that. And it's called Baitroot. And it's really, really interesting to see, because you know that if the traffic goes in there, that it was an attacker, and it actually, you keep the attackers busy by showing them the right results. It's an interesting way to protect your information. It doesn't mean that your main app is not being attacked, but it gets like rid of the script kiddies to a degree. And there's also the next level was the tarpits that people created for AI bots. So basically indexing bots that go to your website and try to scrape your content. That one actually gave you, much like that Wikipedia thing, an endless stream of information to overwhelm your crawler. So that was another interesting way to do that, because when you say on robots text, don't crawl it, and they still crawl it, that basically grinded them to a halt. So that was an interesting thing. Interesting how that legally is working out, but it's again a fascinating idea to get that out there.
I love tech that fights tech like that.
Yeah.
Like it's really clever. I'd love to work on a team that builds stuff like this. It'd be so satisfying.
Well, I think I'm always wondering what companies do that. I mean, there's like Snyk, there's like security companies, there's like what's it called? The one with the little monster, Cerebos, and of course Cloudflare, I think. I mean, one of my favorite stories about Cloudflare is that they generate random hashes because they have a wall full of lava lamps. And they actually have a camera on that one, and they get random numbers from the lava movement in the lava lamps.
Very clever.
That's a very, very cool way of doing it as well. Lars is also something that I played with. I mean, I had Olama running earlier. That's why my machine was so slow. This one allows you to actually run different models locally, and then put like PDFs and images, and you can also batch process whole folders and do like all the things that you normally do in ChatGPT, but all running on your machine. So you can actually use the different open models that you can try on, and you can also run it in a Docker for the whole company if you wanted to. But I found it a very interesting way to make sure that you don't need to go online all the time with your content. You can run it on your own machine or one machine in the office for your whole team. So that's another interesting little thing to look at. This was really, really mental. It's basically a chaplain, it's called, and what it does, it basically recognizes your lip movements and generates text from it, and that all runs locally on your machine as well. I remember there was a movie called They Shall Not Grow Old, which was First World War footage where they slowed it down because it was really sped up, because back then it was tape. So and they colorized it, and they also did the same an algorithm on the lip movement and created subtitles from that, so people saw what their great grandfather was saying for the first time in their life. But I find it really, really cool. It seems like the developer is a rather young chap that actually just built something like this. And I mean, how cool is it to just use? I mean, it's also a security thing if you think about it. Like, even if you have no sound on a video, a system like that can know what you said, much like in science fiction movies when the robot actually sees what people are saying, although they're trying not to see what's going on. That's fun, isn't it?
Very clever. Although, as with any innovative technology like this, I do worry for some of the applications. But also there are good applications for this and bad applications for this. But I think it's very interesting, especially for the restoring old film stuff.
Yeah.
Is it an accessibility thing as well?
Like, if it works with beards and stuff, and like, it will be interesting where the limits are.
True. Is it going to be an accessibility tool? Do you find that, is it going to be something that is then used like as a sort of a sidecar for somebody who maybe can't, is deaf or can just use that tool to then, I don't know, like, is there an application for it like that?
I'm always worried about that, because a lot of times these things then are sold as like a silver bullet to not have to care about accessibility. The machine will do it for you. And I mean, there's also years ago, we had these like avatars that would do sign language from audio, and a real sign language translator is the most beautiful performances I've seen. It's like, it's like ballet in your face. It's just these people. And I mean, there were a few that went viral, like the Eminem translator lady that was dancing at the same time. Yeah. And like, it was just, I think these things are great for doing like automated subtitles or something like that. Yeah, that would be a thing. But then again, I mean, now I see it as somebody living in Germany, like every movie is dubbed, so the lip movement doesn't actually sync the audio at all. So like, that would be interesting to see what the original was, rather than just like what is going on there. But I think it would be fun to try to reach out to him and talk about it a bit more. Is that people actually using their Apple Watch on their ankle now, because it seems like the data is more reliable than the data that is actually on your wrist.
So I saw a conversation on the internet the other day when someone mentioned that they had a walking pad under their desk, but because their hands are on their keyboard when they're walking, their Apple Watch is not picking up their steps as much, as accurately, because I think the steps will be based on how your arms are moving when you're walking, or some other kind of gravitational thing. But if you're stationary up here, you're not technically stepping. So that could be a way to get around that. But again, it's gamification of everything. It's like grifting of the steps. When do you really need your Apple Watch to tell you how many steps you did when you know you did the steps?
Like, yeah. Is it ghost steps if they haven't been recorded? Like, like, is that a thing? Like,
we rely on it too much.
It's weird. I mean, I remember one time I worked in around Ascot, and I was on the train with all the people going to the horse races, and like very, very fancy gear and very, very fancy hats. And one of the lady had this like 6,000 pound dress on and was wearing an ankle monitor. So I was realizing that is an interesting mix of worlds that I have no idea how that happened or what's going on there. So. But it's interesting. I mean, there was even like people, I think in Big Bang Theory, there was one scene where he built this thing that was actually showing his Apple Watch because his wife had given him a watch to exercise more, and he didn't do it. And like, yeah, if you play your system, that is just very bizarre. But yeah,
it's something like the quantified life, something like that, where it's like these tech bros that basically want numbers for everything, like how much did I sleep, how many grams of protein did I take in, how long was my cold shower, and how many steps have I done today, and
how awkward is it going to be trying to check the time by lifting up your ankle all the time? There's going to be a lot of accidents going on around the street. People are going to be hitting their heads on the pavements. It's not practical, is it really?
Well, when you sit on the tube and you cross your legs, then you can just read it from your ankle. I think that might be, like that might be one thing. But yeah, if you see, I guess it's harder to steal as well.
Yeah,
that's one benefit. But yeah, holy, people come up with the weirdest things, like MP3 is not licensed anymore now. Like now we can use MP3 in all of our products, open source projects, without having to pay a license to use MP3. And people forget just how much of a hoo-ha that was and how much of a problem that is. There was another thing in the news the other day about some copyright thing. Yes, it was Amazon not being able to stream in Europe anymore because they had to pay Nokia, I think, for a patent for a streaming format. So there was a danger of like Amazon having to cease all streaming in Europe for a whole month and they're currently not in jail, not yet. They're in court about this, and that's kind of the same thing there as well. So MP3 is now available, but I guess it's redundant because AAC is so much better in packing, and there's better sound packing algorithms that are open source than MP3 anyways. And it's the other thing I saw, I guess I have it in the link archive, where somebody did like a diff of the MP3 and the unpacked FLAC file, and basically only played the sound that was not that was actually optimized away. So that was really interesting because MP3 kind of worked by cutting out the frequencies that people don't hear, so that data was redundant. But then again, people tell me, and I guess you as a musician would agree, that there is vibrations that we don't hear but we still feel. So an MP3 was never as good as a vinyl.
And that's an interesting observation as well, because there are some deaf and hearing impaired people who listen to music via vibrations.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was very little going to a concert and I saw a woman who was holding a balloon and listening to the music by feeling the vibrations of that. And I wonder how that affects experiencing music in that way when you're compressing something so much. Like, does that go away and is basically listening to an MP3 nothing in a way, depending on how loud it is potentially? But yes, vibrations, frequencies, very important for the overall experience.
Now, let's talk about the thing that you wrote, which was how you learned to code with your voice. Tell us all about it and what your findings were about it.
It's still really hard. It's really hard. The biggest... Okay, so the main takeaway is that if you go onto the internet and ask people, what should I do when I can't use my hands anymore, you will get so much advice and it will be so overwhelming, and you may try and use all of the recommended tools at once and get nowhere. Because number one, you're in a state of panic because you can't work anymore. Therefore, you might not be able to earn money anymore, and you might not have a house, and your life is kind of at risk. Number two, that it's going to be personal for everyone, and people are going to find success with lots and lots of different things and combinations of things. And so you have to really put in the effort to learn what works for you. You will also learn throughout this that the web is an extremely hostile place for people who can't use their hands. Extremely hostile in terms of focus styles on clickable elements, scroll hijacking, and a lot of the programs that we use day to day. For example, Notion. There are things that happen on a Notion page that really conflict with even native Apple voice control, as well as the other tools that are available. And it's really, really difficult to get your job done. And obviously, voice dictation for dictating prose, you can really get by with Apple voice control, especially if you're using like one of the native programs like Pages. But when it comes to coding, you can't code without specialist tools with your voice. Think of the amount of special characters you use, weird spellings, camel case, kebab case, snake case. Like it'll take you like 1,000 times longer if you are just trying to dictate like character by character. And that's where this specialist tool comes in that I found success with, called Talon. And Talon is built by programmers for programmers, and it is fully customizable, allowing you to write your own Python scripts to customize different parts of your workflow. For example, I wrote my own custom Talon scripts to write npm run dev in the terminal, like without me having to spell it out. And it's a whole big rabbit hole. But you have to start slowly. You have to start from the beginning, because if you try and start from the middle again, which goes back to us as humans trying to do things as quickly as possible these days, like, you can't do it. And I am still a huge novice at this. I have been lucky that my hand pain since January has got a bit better. So I'm kind of like, at the moment, I am mainly writing blog posts with my voice. But if I have to do a little bit of coding, I'll be probably doing it with my hands, because, again, as well, the cognitive overload of trying to code whilst trying to learn how to use these tools with your voice, like, cannot be underestimated. There is a feature I added to my website with my voice, but it took me 100 times longer. I missed a few bits and pieces here and there that I would have normally like accounted for in my code. It took me 100 times longer than it should have done if I was doing it with my hands. And I've been doing it live on stream as well, which was another challenge, because I had to keep turning off and on the voice control software in between talking to people on the stream. And so it might have been a little bit easier if I wasn't streaming at the same time of doing it, but I needed moral support. But bottom line is, if you are in this situation, and it could be anyone, right? You could lose the use of your hands temporarily or permanently, like tomorrow. You don't know. And I think what doing this live on stream and what writing about this has proved to people is that, like, we are not immortal. And it really highlights a case for the fact that how hostile the web is, because people are not considering this level of accessibility in the things that they're building. AI is not considering it either. And I think I would encourage you to, when you are building stuff and when you are generating code and you're looking back over it, you need to code for your future self, who may become permanently or temporarily unable to use their hands. Because as people who sit at a keyboard all day, this is our livelihood. This is how we stay alive and earn money. And if there is any risk of it being taken away from you, like, your whole life is potentially like broken. And when you were talking about the color simulations on the, can I use these color combinations? I was going to mention it at the time, but the problem is, like, we don't know really, like, until we are in that situation. And you can advocate for accessibility all you want, right? But until people really need it, they generally won't understand why it's needed. For example, I used to, when building stuff, only really check my apps for accessibility based on using screen readers and voiceover. I did not even consider, and I will hold my hands up to this, did not even consider that someone would be using my website just with their voice and without hands. And now it's one of the first things I'm going to check, because I don't know how long my hands are going to take to get better, whether they'll get better at all, and whether this is like my life now. And this is another case for making sure that on our development teams, people building stuff, we have testers, we have developers, we have people who work on the team who have these kinds of disabilities, like a whole spectrum of disabilities. You really cannot understand how it affects people until you are really in that position, or you know someone in that position. And I don't know how this problem can be solved, really, because people with disabilities, they are in the minority, but it just has to be something that you consider. It has to be something, because it could happen to you at any point, and that's the bottom line.
I think an interesting point here is that, like, enthusiasts, let's call them enthusiasts to be like politically correct about AI, or bullshit salesman, we're always saying, like, okay, AI can actually use voice recognition now. So basically, when GitHub Copilot got like voice recognition, it says like you can now talk to your Visual Studio Code and generate code from AI. And I mean, this is like the happy path coding that you talked about. So I guess if your job is to just generate code that already has been done by somebody else, it's not as tricky as it is. But your use case was basically writing code by hand, not with your hands, rather
Yes.
than just letting code generated for you. I guess the code generation with voice recognition works a bit better, but I found it just always frustrating when computers didn't understand me properly as well. Just like, no, I didn't want that. Stop building and pulling random npm packages in. You know,
See,
it's
I also find that even with my accent, a lot of voice recognition programs don't recognize things unless I sometimes say it in an American way. But also, I did try. I was using Cursor and Claude to dictate my prompt with my voice and then accept the code that it gave me. But going back to one of our very first discussions, that's not how I'm used to working. I want to write my code. I don't want to completely change the way I'm working just because I've developed a temporary or permanent disability. I want to continue working in the way that I'm accustomed to and that I want, and that pleases me the best. And so I think there's a bit of a cop-out that people suggesting, oh, you can just say what you want to an AI now. It's like, well, that's not the point. I want to be able to work in the way I want to. And that's another thing. A lot of people who fight against the accessibility practices, they say, oh, well, just don't do it then, or don't do it that way, or maybe this isn't for you. But without the level of empathy and thinking, and that actually people want to be able to do stuff any way they want. And so you should allow them to do that. And that is one of the biggest human problems I think we need to solve.
A few European guidelines on accessibility or like legal requirements actually have voice recognition as part of it. I remember just before I left the Edge team, we had to actually make sure that in Italy, I think it was, that the developer tools can be controlled by voice as well. And that's when Apple also rolled out that new feature in iOS, in macOS, that you actually can have the voice control going in there. I find it's weird because it's always sold as this like a silver bullet for accessibility. Like you can talk to your computer and it can generate stuff for you. And case in point, that the generated stuff is not what you want, but the feature is always sold as this like, and this makes it available to everybody out there. But the amount of how error prone voice recognition is, just like being, you're in an office with 500 people, everybody talking to their computer won't be a thing. Like it's a very intrusive. It's not asynchronous. It's a very synchronous thing as well. You talk to it, you get back. You talk to it, you get back. You cannot just skim an audio or skim your what you want to say. So it feels like that it's that Star Trek thing, like computer help me out, and it's always sold as the one feature of AI that makes it available to everybody out there. But it's interesting to see. It would be interesting to see if it's the same for like a video editor or a designer or somebody who tries to use voice recognition to control his things.
This is a thing. Actually, in January, when I was really, really in pain, I had to edit a video for work. And I couldn't do it with my voice, like, because the dragging and of the bits on the timeline and the clicking over there, clicking it was, I couldn't, and I had a deadline and I just couldn't learn how to do it in the time that I had. And it would have been even more frustrating than coding, I think, because you're interacting with a very complex program rather than just writing characters on a screen. And that was tough. It was tough mentally as well as physically, because I had no choice but to make my pain worse at that time. I just had no idea how I would even begin to use Adobe Premiere Pro with my voice.
I might try it. I think that's kind of motivated me to put myself through that pain, Salma, because I think you're making a really good point. There could be some amazing video editors and whatever developers who, for whatever reason, don't get to do that job in the future. And I cannot imagine video editing with your voice. It's hard enough without a mouse. I had to do it recently, with just a trackpad, and I was like, oh, it's a nightmare. But with your voice, I cannot even imagine it when it's one frame you're zooming in on. But I think there's it's really good that you've actually written this up and turned it into a blog for other people to see how it's nearly impossible to do it effectively, isn't it? Which is a real shame.
Yep. And I do like to think that perhaps if I continue with it, I could become some kind of wizard, because I do think if you get really good at it, it could be quicker than typing. If you like really nail the syntax and the commands and you learn every single one of the thousands of commands, I think it could be really powerful. And it could be a good party trick to do when live streaming, for example. But then I don't know whether I have the time to invest to full time really learn, because we've all got deadlines. We've all got stuff to do. We've got other things to get on with. And where's the time to really put in that deep learning activity to make those connections connect in your brain?
I think it's interesting that we can go back full circle to the AI and AI for good and AI like where do we go next? Because I remember years ago I saw like a spoon for people that have Parkinson's, and that basically that like when you shake your hand, the spoon was staying straight, and what it was using was the same microcontroller that was in the first digital cameras that stabilized the images. So that one was using that one. And I think 10 years ago at Google, at Microsoft Build, there was a demo of a ring that basically could, a bracelet that people could put on their hand, and that would learn their tremors and actually counteract them. So the person was basically showing how they used machine learning, as we called it back then, rather than like everything being AI, to actually make sure that that person can then actually move their hand accordingly, because the tremors would get counteracted with weights, kind of thing. I think that was the thing. But it was once again one of those slideware things. Like, it's a great feel good thing in a keynote to have somebody with a disability overcome their disability with technology. But then I heard nothing about it for years and years, and it just feels like this is where AI can shine. This is where deep learning can shine, to actually find the erroneous movements in humans and help them out. There was another one where there was a dancer and she lost a leg, and then they had made her bionic leg and trained it on like thousands and thousands of hours of her dancing, of the videos that she did before. So they could actually make it move the way she would normally naturally move. It wouldn't feel like logging a peg leg around. And that kind of stuff I want to see more, and I want to see it much more than just in a keynote. And well, as we said before, with like the French stuff that's happening right now, and the French government doing 122 billion for AI. I told Dan earlier, it's only French AI if it comes from the region of Champagne. Otherwise, it's just sparkling machine learning. But we go from there, and we had a good start. And it was great to have you here. It was great that this write-up is here.
Thank you.
And yeah, we're way past our time, but we actually had a lot of good fun talking about things. And it would be great to see more where this is going, and maybe get some people involved who actually have that affliction from the beginning and actually use their computer just with voice, to see if they have tricks for you that you hadn't thought of.
Yeah, try it. I urge everyone just to try it for a day, see how you go, and just understand what it's like.
Cool. Any other last words from you?
Hold on to your youth and your health and your physical abilities, because you never know when they might be taken away from you.
Makes sense. I realized that as well. I got like I'm thinking about ears and not hearing everything anymore, and not just voluntarily not wanting to hear it, but like physically not being able to hear some things by now. And years of punk concerts actually were the problem there. But yeah, forget. Oh God, that's such a terrible way to end. Like, could think of yourself as like your future. So Dan, you got something positive to end on?
Yes. It's all okay. We're still here. You know, it's not that serious. We're just playing with computers. Enjoy your life. Hope you enjoyed the stream. We'll see you next time. How's that? That's a little bit more positive, right?
That was excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Salma. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
And
Bye.
we see you next week.